Hey everybody, welcome to Mauya Storytime. Look at this jewel of a book that we found today while just tidying up. It's called Who Was Mandela? I'm just going to read a few pages of it for you, but do go out and get it. Fantastic little book for those wanting to learn about history and about this amazing man called Nelson Mandela. Now let's read a little bit together. Before we read a couple of pages of this amazing little book, Who Was Nelson Mandela? Please watch this 5-minute clip from News 24, recorded about 15 to 16 years ago, telling you a little bit about the history of the man Nelson Mandela, his birthplace, and his family line, and then we'll dive back into the book. So enjoy.
Nelson Mandela started life in the most humble of settings, deep in the rural Eastern Cape. Given the birth name of Rolihlahla, which translates as troublemaker, it seems his turbulent future was unconsciously predicted.
I am an African with an open heart and a rainbow-colored skin, and I fit in.
Although his simple beginnings bear little resemblance to the infamy that became his journey through life, Mandela recognizes these are the roots that bind him to his identity as an African, and he has never forgotten the important role his childhood played in shaping him as a person. He was born on the 18th of July, 1918, in Umvezu, a small village nestled on the banks of the Mbashi River in Umtata, Transkei. Mandela is a member of the Tembu people, a Xhosa lineage that traces him to the Madiba clan. Mandela's father, Gadla Henry Mpakaniswa, was chief by blood and custom of Umvezu. When Mandela was very young, Mpakaniswa was involved in a dispute with the local magistrate. His defiance towards the white authority cost him his chieftainship. Having lost all their land, cattle, and wealth, the Mandela family was forced to relocate to the nearby village of Kunu. This is where Mandela spent his boyhood, learning the nuances of his culture and rural life. By the age of 5, he was a herd boy, looking after sheep and cattle. His free time was spent swimming, fishing, stick fighting, and playing with his friends out in the open veld. One favorite game was to slide down the many large smooth rocks dotting the hills of Kunu. The largest of these rocks, known as the Sliding Stone, bears a well-worn path, testament to the great entertainment it served to the local youth.
No, I inhabit this part of the planet where the sun shines down.
At age 7, Mandela became the first member of his family to attend school. It was here that Mandela was assigned his Western name of Nelson. When Mandela's father died 2 years later, he was handed into the guardianship of the acting regent of the Tembu people, Chief Jongitaba, and left his home in Kunu. Despite leaving the area so early on, Mandela has spoken of these years in Kunu with great fondness, saying it was here that a love of the veld and the simple beauty of nature was entrenched. Testament to Mandela's great affection for this area is the retirement home he built in Kunu upon his release from prison in 1990. He still travels from his Houghton, Johannesburg home to stay here. Members of the local community say that up until a few years ago, it was not uncommon to see Mandela walking through the nearby villages, stopping to chat to the community. In recent years, the Tembu king expressed his keenness to restore the Mandela chieftaincy. Nelson Mandela's grandson, Zwelivelile Mandela, became the next in line to assume the position.
I've always been in love with the birthplace where we come from and this rural settings. And it was only when my grandfather stood down and said he wasn't going to take up his father's chieftaincy. And obviously after him, it was his 2 sons. The first son had passed on in 1969. And with my father's passing in 2005, it left me now as the only successor to the chieftaincy. I believe with my grandfather's journey and with his imprisonment, a lot of those traditions and cultures have been eroded within the family. And for me, I'm just a hand that is trying to extend and subscribe to those traditions that gave the values and principles my grandfather has today.
After becoming chief in 2007, Zwelivelile moved back to the original Mandela family homestead in Mvezu. He has set about reinstating the family legacy in the area, rebuilding the homestead, including the hut in which Nelson Mandela was born. Zwelivelile, though very young to be a leader of this stature, takes part in all matters of Mvezu community life, from teaching the local soccer team to settling disputes. The Mandela legacy now continues to live on, in the place where it all began.
Who Was Mandela? By Pam Pollock and Meg Belviso. Illustrated by Stefan Marchesi. Printed by Penguin Workshop. Who was Mandela? In the heart of Tembuland in South Africa was a grand house. The local people called it the Great Place. Here lived Jongindaba, who ruled as king. The Great Place was his royal home. On this day in 1927, Jongindaba was holding a tribal meeting. The men talked about important matters. Also in the room was a young boy who had come to live in the Great Place only a short time before. He was 9 years old. After the boy's own father died, the king had adopted him. The boy listened to the men talk and watched his foster father. The king did not speak. He listened. He thought everyone deserved a voice in his kingdom, no matter who they were. Then, when he sensed that people had said all they needed to, the king gave his opinion. This approach was very different from the way the rest of the country of South Africa was ruled. Let's jump all the way to chapter 4, the Defense Campaign. In 1950, Nelson was elected president of the Youth League. In 1952, the ANC sent a letter to the Prime Minister saying that since all the ANC complaints had fallen on deaf ears, they were going to take action. Well, we'll leave it there. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of Who Was Mandela? Great little book. You can read this in probably one sitting on an afternoon, and you can learn some of the key facts and the key points in the history of the man that we know who was Nelson Mandela, famous and a hero to many. And I hope you enjoyed that. There's a link to the book in the video or in the description. And if you enjoyed the little reading and the review, leave us a comment and share. Thank you. See you next time. Bye. We will leave you with a recording courtesy of the freedomarchives.org of Nelson Mandela speaking immediately after his release.
Not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. Your tireless and heroic sacrifices have made it possible for me to be here today. Gratitude. compatriots and those in every corner of the globe who have campaigned tirelessly for my release. Our march to freedom is irreversible. We must not allow fear to stand in our way. I have fought against white domination. And I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.